Uganda's economy will likely grow even much slower this year is a grim reminder that hard times lie ahead. The Executive Director for Research in the Central Bank, Dr. Adam Mugume, recently forecast that the economy could grow much slower if the rains don't fall. What does this mean? Could the economy fall in a tailspin and finally into a recession? Or could there be remedies to cure the problem? On the spot tonight is the former Agriculture Minister and former Food and Agriculture Organization representative, Victoria Sektoleko. Dr. Nicholas Kauta, former Director for Animal Resources in the Agriculture Ministry, and a financial economist, Bakr Mayanja. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the show. The spotlight is on you. You're on the spot, all of you. Let me begin with you, Dr. Kauta. Considering the quotation I was getting from the Director of Research at the Central Bank, Dr. Mugume, who is saying that 2017 is likely also to give us sluggish kind of growth, even worse than 2016. And so, if the drought continues, if the status quo remains the way it is the economy in a tailspin from your point of view?
Well, definitely, if the rain doesn't fall, it will happen. Because this is a rain-fed agriculture system, and when there is no rain, there are no crops. All animals feed on crops. So you'll suffer from the crop sector and suffer from the livestock sector. Livestock only reproduce when what they call the positive balance in the energy. That means they are what they call a condition score. You have extra, far extra beyond maintenance, and therefore there is reproduction. Now, if there is no food, if there is no pasture, the animals lose weight and they are in a negative energy balance. And what normally happens is things like the non-essentials for survival, like reproduction, are shut out first. So you will get a number of animals that are not reproducing, they are not getting on heat, they are not reproducing. And if that takes time, it means we are going to lose some period when the animals are not reproducing normally. And that alone has a very big effect on the economy. And the fact that you can only get milk from animals that have given birth, it means that the milk production will also be lost. So that one is definitely true. That if we don't get rain, a lot will happen negative.
Victoria, Uganda has almost 50% of East Africa's arable land.
Yeah.
That you can do agriculture here than anywhere else in East Africa.
Yeah.
Why do we find ourselves, almost 10 million people, facing starvation?
We do not only have the 50% of arable land, we also have over 50% of all the water resources actually in Africa, not only in East Africa. Now, I think for too long, agriculture has been taken for granted. You know that saying, Uganda is gifted by nature, and Uganda is an agricultural country, which is only in words, but not in action. You know, sometimes when I'm talking to some people, and I remember the past. I remember when my father went to school, you had to pass religion in order to pass, coming from P4 to P5. If you failed your religion, then you couldn't proceed. When my elder brother was at school, you had to pass English. Otherwise, you did not get your certificate. Uganda is an agriculture country. By now, agriculture should be compulsory. Should be taught to everybody from nursery school to university. But all we do is talk about it and somehow sit in Kampala and hope and pray that the farmers will produce. Unfortunately, this time.
At one time, this was in your docket. Agriculture was your docket. You were a Minister of Agriculture at one time before you represented us at FAO. Was it any different? Did you build a spine for agriculture?
It was beautiful. One thing I'll never forget is that around 1989-90, when I was minister, we produced so much food that the president had to go around the world looking for a market for what we had produced. And of course, that was a fantastic problem to have. That is how the World Food Programme and International Red Cross started buying food from Uganda instead of bringing food for Ugandans to eat. So things were good, and actually at that time, agriculture was prioritized. My ministry was known as the wet ministry. So we had it all, and we delivered.
Babakar, what happens when you have the biggest part of your population contributing less to your GDP? I mean, Uganda's population, almost 70 or 80% are engaged in agriculture, but they are contributing so less to our GDP. Does that show us that a country which is moving forward?
I think what it shows us is a missed opportunity, if you like, because the given rate of growth for transformation is 8%, and we've been growing at 5%. Agriculture has been growing at 2% for the last 10 years. So if it had been growing at 5%, probably the economy would have transformed. So it goes without saying that that's a missed opportunity. I can give you another staggering statistic. The productivity of a worker in agriculture in Uganda is $200, which is about 600,000 per annum. And so that's where the challenge is. If that is the productivity, then it's a very low productivity. It's one of the lowest in the world. So for me, it presents a problem, but also an opportunity. It means that there is potential to focus resources and energies to create faster growth in the economy.
So, but Dr. Kauta, when everybody talks about the potential that is in agriculture, that we have the arable land, we have the water, that we could feed the continent. At one time you were in the ministry. I mean, do the leaders don't get it?
Well, I believe the leaders get it. But when the economies are small, there are issues of priority. So there is prioritization. And when they prioritize, they explain the priorities. The reality of the matter is that sometimes when we privatize things too much, issues come. For example, the financing institutions have always regarded agriculture to be risky. And that's the source of money that would drive the economy. So this drought is making matters worse because it is proving their case that agriculture is risky. It gets worse. And then they will not be willing to put money there. And then you look at getting yourself in the margins of the rich side and the poor side. The people who are poor are the ones who are keeping most of the animals. And there are the issues of so-called resilience. If you just move a step down, you are crashing. So you are being told to be resilient. See how you can do A, B, C, D to get this and that done, to pull out of the poor side to the other side. But for me, through the time I've been in the ministry, I've realized that farming, particularly in the livestock side, has never been a commercial for most people. I have known big shots whom I was associating with. Their farms were booming when they were still working with the government or working with some organization. The moment they left those organizations, the farms collapsed. Meaning that those farms were sustained on the resources from another area, but not from the farms themselves. Exactly. I have seen, I can quote many of those, but we don't have to talk about anybody in particular. So it means commercialization of agriculture is still far from real.
So Victoria, when they talk about a possible famine, 10 million people, as a former Minister of Agriculture, do you agree that that can happen? And if that really happens, and you have people probably going to the sub-counties and asking from the RDCs or whoever it is asking for food, that is a potential for a real revolution, not so?
Yeah, it is, but fortunately this is Uganda, and those 10 million people will not starve. It really is an extreme position to starve to death. So one, those people are not going to starve to death, basically because the weather forecasters are saying it may rain in March, which is next month. And as soon as it rains in Uganda, of course, the seeds and the trees and whatever will sprout. And once again, the livestock will have something to eat, and the people will have something to start with. But be that as it may, whether these people are going to starve to death or not, really, the word starvation, the word famine, have no business being in the same sentence with Uganda. We are supposed to be the food basket of the region. I just can't imagine what the Kenyans, Sudanese, and the Congolese who always come shopping from Uganda are thinking when we are here busy saying, oh, we are going to starve. And the other day I heard Parliament suggesting that Uganda should actually declare a state of emergency because we are hungry. Really, if you are the boss in the home and the thieves have come, your job is not to ululate. It is the young children who raise the alarm. For you, you are supposed to fight back. So, in my view, nobody is, some people are having it rough, but having traveled around Uganda between the month of November, December, and January, I know that all is not lost. There are some parts of Uganda which are still doing okay, and I'm definitely sure those will share with those who are about to starve.
According to the map we have seen, the only parts of Uganda where things are okay, in fact, are a few districts.
Yes.
And also we have seen lorries coming from South Sudan, from northern Tanzania,
yes,
from Kenya,
yes,
and they are taking food,
yes,
and they are selling everything that they have.
Yes.
So, and the next 2 months, there will be no food even in the places you are saying there's food now, because people are cashing in without knowing that that's the only place where there was no crop failure, maybe in 2016. But Bakr, how do we get out of such a situation in this case?
How we get out of the situation, before I get there, I wanted to first draw some attention to some of the extreme things that have happened there. There used to be a very great civilization called the Mayan civilization in the 5th century. The population grew so much that they didn't have any more land to plant, and they started starving. And when they started starving, they even turned to cannibalism. There's a famous economist called Malthus who predicted that this might happen. Now, because I wanted to put things in context before I answer your question, there is a phenomenon of climate change and global warming. I don't want to go into the details of that, but my experience has been different from doctors because I've also traveled around the country. And for me, I'm a bit scared from what I've seen, because I've gone to the village and I've found families that never bought food buying food. And I've gone there several times.
But there is
and
food to buy.
And found that people expect rain, they plant, and then it doesn't come. So we have to first accept that the dynamics of the weather have changed, and that's the biggest risk. So to come back to your question, to solve this issue, we have to change a few things. The way agriculture has been done in Uganda for the last 50 years has to change. We have to now start thinking of modern farming methods and think about the smallholder.
If agriculture has been done in a poor way in the last 50 years, for the last 30 at least, this country is in the hands of the NRM government. You have been in the Ministry of Agriculture. You retired now, I suppose. So do you see, if 30 years have not given us a pointer that we can change, do you have any kind of hope that we can change in the next 2, 3, 4 years? Or now that we'll have to wait for another administration? Perhaps we don't know even when it will ever come.
To me, things have changed.
Things have changed?
I want
because
to tell
we're
you,
facing starvation?
No, that's not the idea. The thing is that the government took over when there were so many conflicts. And you know there was depopulation of animals in the east, the northeast, and what, and through that. But you see there is a lot of restocking which has taken place. And if you go to those places, they are actually they have now more animals than some of the places that never suffered from this. And those animals are helping them to survive. Those are the silent things that people don't take into account. But those who go there see that these people did not have this, but they now have it. And that's quite positive. what is happened today, the issue of drought, is like a disease that kills a very healthy child suddenly. You are developing, you are doing well, then suddenly something similar to an accident just comes and stops.
But
it.
how can
That's
you
what is
say
happening.
that
So we
agriculture
cannot-
was even healthy when we were depending on rain, when we were doing our agriculture is so rudimentary? I mean, how can you even say that is a health and efficient system? It is sickly.
I will tell you that I was in the States and they were suffering from drought also. They had a difficult time and they were depopulating their livestock, because I went there over livestock issues in Texas and some. So the idea of drought must be understood in the context of a rainfall,
The drought
because irrigation has limits.
The drought in the areas of Texas and California, in fact, I'm told there was no rain from 2012 almost until recently.
Yes.
If that happened in Africa, would be no people.
Exactly.
Because they were ready.
but you know that most
For
of
4 years, California didn't have
yeah,
rainfall.
those big economies are the source of everything for us. So all the profits are made out of us, so they can be resilient. But for us, who get no profits from them, we have those problems.
Anyway,
yeah,
I think this is a wake-up call.
yeah.
Those days of it will rain and it will start in March and it will stop in July and whatever are gone. From all the predictions, everybody who is talking about climate change, we shall not go back to that. But fortunately, they don't say it will not rain. It will rain, it will be short-lived, and in some cases it will be really torrential. So what do we have to do now? Find a way of saving the water as and when it is there, and transporting the water where we need it, when we need it. That business of Jamera Jane, they no longer grow on their own. We now have to do it.
And to add to that is the conservation
Yes.
of what we have, the resources. Because we have lots of bushes growing, we don't conserve the pastures, so we don't.
Yeah.
And in all these developed countries, their growth is based on conserving those pastures.
Hold on to your points there. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's find out what would be the cumulative gain if this country invested in agriculture. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot, and we're discussing the agricultural potential, but also the missed opportunities, if I may say. That's what Abu Bakr called it. Now, what would be the cumulative gain if we invested in agriculture? And I'm assuming we're going to tell us that we would get so much. How come the managers of our economy have not invested in it?
Now, what is puzzling is the statistics. We produce 25% of our GDP now is agriculture. 47% of the exports are agriculture, and 73% are employed in the agriculture sector. But we spend 3.5% of the money we have available to spend in the economy. So obviously it goes without saying that there is a mismatch there. We are depending on this sector, but we're not feeding it. Going back to Dr. Kauta's example, if you don't feed a cow, you're not likely to get milk out of it. Now, the opportunity that can arise, of course, agriculture contributing 50% of our export means we are literally living off it for the last 50 years. It means that if you increased focus, and by focus I don't mean just funding, because you also need to inject new knowledge in the agricultural sector to change methods to increase productivity, you would have an increase in GDP and an increase in incomes. It goes without saying. And then if we don't be so optimistic and we look on the negative side, you would provide what is called food security, which Dr. Sechtoriko earlier alluded to. But right now we are not so confident about the food security in Uganda. It's not something to take lightly anymore. So it ceases to be about opportunity and becomes a matter of national strategic importance to invest in agriculture and to encourage us to take up new methods. Some countries like Brazil and Argentina are living off agriculture.
But
we can learn
Dr.
from them.
Sechtoriko, how come that even with a paltry 3-point-something% of the budgetary of the percentage of budget that is put into agriculture, some money is returned to the national coffers because of lack of absorption capacity in the same ministry?
Have you ever looked at the chart of the Ministry of Agriculture? Do you know how many vacant posts they have? And how many of those people there have been acting this, acting that for years? There is more to it than just the budget. But before I comment on that, I wanted to comment on your earlier question, which is what would happen if we put more resources in agriculture. For me, the first and most important thing that would happen is that we would put money in agriculture education so that nearly every Ugandan appreciates, understands agriculture. Secondly, if we went beyond that and invested in agriculture development, then nearly every Ugandan would have a job. Because we have got the potential to employ everybody. I just don't understand why something that obvious cannot be seen. Because by investing in just that sector, you take care of food security, you take care of unemployment, you also get rid of the poverty. This means of 2020 and whatever, there is no way we are going to get anywhere even in 2040 without agriculture.
So, well, we are not, it is the comparative advantage, it is what we can do best. We cannot go into technology, but we are, how, and the president and other leaders have talked about value addition, but value addition has only remained in talk. What will it take for us to walk the talk, Dr. Kauta?
Well, one thing, value addition has got the element of input supply. We know that, for example, in the dairy sector, we have more capacity to process than what we can present. So our factories called underutilized. So that's not a problem of the investors. They have invested, and we have to match this. Now, in everything you do, there may be 20 limiting factors, but there may be the main limiting factor.
Exactly.
And we have to focus on the main limiting factors. Once those are identified, we do very well. For example, if the soil is not fertile, you must add fertility to the soil. Otherwise, productivity per unit area becomes the limiting factor. It does not matter what you do if the soil does not have the nutrients required to put up that plant, to put up that pasture, then you're wasting time. So we must look at soil fertility as one of those issues.
But is it really soil fertility an issue at the moment?
It is an issue in several places. It may be very good somewhere else, it's not good somewhere else. For sure.
It's a big issue.
If you travel, for example, between Tororo and Mbari, there are areas there, the maize cannot grow beyond 1 meter. And so we must look at this. And once you have pockets of people who are not having the production, then the system fails, because you cannot rely on a few people who have the chance to produce well. So we have to look at soil fertility. The issue of water, as you say, is complicated because harvesting and using water is a very expensive thing. So there are those areas that can be irrigated. We deal with those. But the conservation of water in several places has to be done with existing technology. I was in Kenya and somebody was growing bogoya in a place which looked quite dry. I said, how are you doing it? And he never allowed a single drop of water to leave that farm where the bogoya was. It was like a form of terracing, and all the bogoya plants were in a kind of depressed area, so that all the rain which remained never flowed out and remained there. Said it is very effective. Those are some of the technologies. Otherwise, for us, it is raining and it is flowing and going and causing all the gullies down. So if we could manage to retain this water to sink into the ground for some time, those are some of the things. So there are several packages that can be utilized, and that water is critical, soil fertility is very, very critical, and disease control, because there is no way you will plant so many acres only for the pests and the diseases to come and wipe out. That's another issue. Yeah.
But we no longer have serious extension services, Dr. Sektoleko, that could help the farmers in the village, with new knowledge and tell them what to do vis-a-vis the changing climate conditions.
So
the farmers are still using their rudimentary traditionally gained kind of knowledge that is not working as of now.
But you know, even that rudimentary knowledge would be better than what they are getting now. Because the government phased out agriculture extension services, fake extension people came up, and you don't want to know what information they are giving out. We now have fake trainers, everybody pretending to know what they are talking about and just misleading the farmers. But I wanted to comment on your earlier question, which was about value addition. And Dr. Kauta told you we have got excess capacity. It is not only there where we have excess capacity. You must know that fish factories have closed. But why would fish factories in Uganda close? We have got water. And really all you need in order to produce fish is water. So for now, if we are to do something about why isn't this happening and the other, let us look at what we have, especially where we don't need a lot of money. Let us start with the water. He was talking about the land and the fertility. In quite a number of cases, for fertility, you do not even have to buy the imported fertilizers. We grew up using manure, and it still works. Everybody is using that. So if we can look at those limiting factors, chief among which is production in order to feed the factories. So what is limiting production? Maybe the soil is not fertile, maybe the people do not have the technology, the researchers have not been facilitated. We have taken ages deciding about the biotechnology and biosafety bill. What is there to think and rethink and rethink?
Bubakar, if nature pushes us against the wall, and if our managers are not doing the right things, what could be the resultant effect to the population? What in such circumstances, what happens? What would happen?
I drew for you an example last time of the Mayan civilization. I'll give you another one. In Chile, they had a small island, and they cut down all the trees to build boats and houses, and then the land was degraded, and they reached a point also where they could not feed themselves. Now, society, when it is confronted with problems, usually comes up with the worst of solutions. So they ended up in war, civil war, and cannibalism. So this is the extreme that can happen. Then, of course, when you come to Uganda, starvation will just be an addition to all the other problems that we have, because we still have the challenge of poverty and transforming the country to a middle-income country status. So obviously, for me, the biggest fear is if we don't adjust, we will be adding another problem to all the other problems that we have, because food is a basic need. There are three basic needs in economics: a house, food, and clothing. And so sometimes they say that you don't have to think too much to transform an economy. You can focus on
those three.
So if you don't have a very good housing policy and house delivering industry, food and food delivery. But what is important to note about food is that I would like to say a few things that might help from a policy perspective. You have to look at the production and the demand. The demand for food is not the final person who eats, it's the processor, to increase its shelf life. If you produce avocados, they have to be converted into something. If you produce milk, it has to be pasteurized. The challenge has always been when you intervene on the supply side and you increase production and you don't increase processing capacity. So the mismatch is always the problem. Then the other issue is the markets where the product exchange is exchanged and information. We have some initiatives. You can't exactly say the government has done nothing, because I know fiscal policy, for example, on taxation. If you invest in agriculture, the tax regime is different. But the complaint has been that even if you can bring in agricultural machinery without taxation, the parts, the spare parts are taxed, and that has created a problem. So in Uganda, it's always a big challenge when you have capital outlay in, let's say, the fisheries sector, and then there's no fish. As a country, we can't afford this kind of thing. And that's where I tend to agree with Dr. Sechitoreko that we can start where we are. And always keep in mind that you have too much supply And
we have seen Ugandans, through their ingenuity and creativity and innovations, trying to put some shelf life on some of our products.
Yeah.
For example, if you see bushera or porridge, and different juices of different, you can go into the supermarket and you find them Ugandan made, and maybe somebody may not have to go and take something else that is foreign because there's something Ugandan.
Yeah.
But there's little that has been done to help those innovations and grow. So
I think the challenge has been in the new areas of that create economic growth. Before, we used to think that if you improve agronomy, like Dr. Kauta is saying and Dr. Sechitoreko, you increase production, inevitably you create economic growth. Until it became apparent that factors like knowledge, finance, and logistics are important. I have a friend who produces and processes cashew, like you're saying. But by the time the cashew comes from Kasese and from West Nile, it's 50% of the input cost is transport and logistics.
Yeah.
So this sector, obviously, actually Adam Smith was the one who said that if you don't have efficient logistics and transport, you can't have an economy, because the millet comes to Kampala to be processed, and then the cashew is taken back. But the person who produced the cashew in the first place cannot enjoy it because it's too expensive. And therefore, for me, I think that when you think about agriculture, issues like finance have to be considered. How is the smallholder and the process of finance? There's a binding constraint there. And then just to add, just to finish, one of the other policy issues is in the Financial Institutions Act, when a bank is required to write down a mortgage, the structure is that after 3 months, they have to write it down. But agricultural production is in seasons. So we have a mismatch between the main productive sector and the availability of finance structure by law. That is a limiting factor. Just to expound it a bit more, the reason my grandfather never borrowed from the bank, he used to tell me, Abu, they want me to pay money every month, but I only produce coffee twice a year. This is a very important factor for me who comes from that angle of finance. That after, how do you expect a farmer to pay you on a monthly basis?
When he has only one season or two.
So these are the soft issues.
But also, even if somebody was able to pay every month, some of the, the interest rates are around 27%.
Yes.
And if you are into production, electricity tariffs are so high. And if you are in Kampala, there's some kind of corruption that you have to face, and logistical challenges. So there's no wonder that you will find non-performing loans so high and banks collapsing, because the situation is difficult for a person to engage in business and be productive and make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but while there are those non-performing loans, and because some of them have led to difficulties in the banks, we think that's the big thing. In my view, the big thing is this business of targeting those few at the top. Because earlier on, we were talking about the new yield fund, which is supposed to be having 40 billion, whatever, and so on and so forth. The first thing that I asked when I was given the summary about this fund was exactly whom are they targeting? Because really, in this country, where 72% of us, our businesses are well below $50,000. When you bring in a fund which says if you are worth $300,000, really the stakes are so high that we, the dwarfs, should not even be in the conversation. So if you have got maybe 70% of your people in the group I'm explaining, even if the 2% paid their loans or didn't pay their loans, really they are not.
They're already excluded.
Exactly, we are already excluded. So in my view, Uganda is an agriculture country. When I say everybody should appreciate it, even the finance policies, the tax regime, the banks, everybody should understand and speak the language of the majority so that we can be included in the conversation. But if we are excluded from the word go, when things fall apart is when everybody is like, oh, what is happening to agriculture? I mean, we have all been drafted down there.
If Dr. Kauta, assuming we get an agricultural bank, and knowing how Uganda is, can't it also attract others who are not actually into into the agriculture sector for the sake of getting the money that has the lowest percentage. How do you stop that? Because I would see everybody going into it, even if they're not into agriculture.
One thing the agricultural bank would do miracles, because it would be a form of affirmative action, like the government decided that we are affirmative action for the ladies, the youth, what, you lower the pass mark for whatever admission points and what. If you go to countries where the agricultural, they will tell you a grace period of 4, 5, 6 years
Exactly.
to develop this. I was in Denmark. The man was on a dairy farm and 200 animals using a laser-guided milking machine. And I
Laser-guided?
Laser-guided. I said, no. And he said, I took a loan. I said, how will you pay? He said, I have a 20-year grace period. 20-year grace period. Now, he as we said, you take a loan and the next month you are starting to pay.
So how does
Before
Africa
production.
compete with such
So
a guy?
we need, yeah, that's the problem. So the agricultural bank has to come with the terms that drive agriculture ahead. But the present system only drains the farmer before he can produce.
And very briefly, Bakar, the present system, even if you succeeded, can you compete at a global scale, considering the example it's giving us?
I like the fact that you brought the word competition.
Yeah.
In my view, Africa hasn't been in the competition. We've just been surviving. Now, I must say there have been some initiatives. Like in the Ministry of Local Government, they have what they call CAIP, Community Agriculture Infrastructure Project. They're building markets. Then the Bank of Uganda had what they call the Agricultural Credit Facility, which was coming in at 12%. But again, it was a limiting factor. But the most important point that I've had today, that I had in my mind, was also what Dr. Sechitoliko said. The new fund we have launched, you could say that we need another one for smaller people.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
For real people.
because 96% are small.
Yeah.
96% are smallholders. The solution to agriculture in Uganda is micro, the small person. So for us, agricultural bank should be micro agricultural bank. And I don't think we lack the resources to do this. If people need us to structure these kinds of things, we know even the way the loans are structured would be different. They would be based on the season. That somebody will get a yield in May. That's when they will sell in June after drying, and this is when they are supposed to pay. I see some areas in finance that can improve agriculture in Uganda. Okay. So the fund that has been launched is good for the big people. We need another one for small people because they are 96%.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be asking, but also I'll be opening the line so that you two at home, or wherever you are, you could call and give us your observation, your view, or your comment on the issue of agriculture and how we stand today. Or probably, can this possible starvation be the shock therapy that maybe will make the people move? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Dr. Kauta, Dr. Sechitoliko, and Mr. Bakar Mayanja. Bakar, could this be the shock therapy that at the end of the day will jolt everybody in positions of leadership and power to wake up and do something, and then agriculture will be like never before?
I will start with us before I go to the government. When I went to my home where we never bought food, and I thought, we had started buying food in Masaka, that was shock therapy for me. My grandmother buying food was a shock. It really shocked me to the core. Now, when it comes to matters of public policy and the elected leaders, the decisions they make are supposed to reflect the hopes and aspirations of the people. But I don't want to bet on what choices they are going to make. But for sure, if you are faced with the possibility of people starving, that should be shock therapy for you, I think. So I agree with you.
It is, talking about buying food, it is very common nowadays that if you're going to the village, even me who comes from the Toro region, sometimes you'll have to buy food and a few things that you would ordinarily never have bought and go with them. Back in the day, you'd only buy only those things that are never found in the village. So things have changed, that you have to take even food. And that's dangerous. Dr. Kauta, can we say our people lazy, or our people have not been supported?
There are a number of factors contributing to this. The human population has expanded very, very, very fast. That's one of the issues, and the productivity per individual has fallen. That is also observed. So when you get very big migration into town, like we see, then we leave no producers in the village, and we are leaving our old people in the villages, and we want to go and get food from them. It's not possible. Previously, food was coming to town. Now we have to take it there because the food has been produced in Kiriandongo, plenty, brought to town, that there is little food in my village. So I carry it the other way. That the human population cannot be ignored. Then climate change. The weather has changed so badly. I had never seen this type of weather before. Because you drive from here, I'm from the east, you drive from here to Mbale, and you find the maize was just drying, it's drying. So there is no second rain crop to talk about.
And I've
so
seen a river disappear in my lifetime.
Exactly.
Somewhere in Kenya, we used to have a river called Revijoka. I've seen it disappear. We used to go there when we were little children to go and swim there from school, and you pass by, take a dip. It's no more.
Yeah.
And in 30 years, the river is gone. So if that pertains almost other parts of Uganda, then the situation is dire.
Yeah.
I'm going to be opening the line so that people can tell us what they think and maybe give us solutions if they have, and their observation from where they are. So I'm taking the very first caller online. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Samuel.
Yes, Samuel.
And, I just wanted to make a comment regarding the issue around agriculture finance.
Okay.
As Abu Bakr noted, of course, you would want to have the bulk of the finance or funding going towards smallholders. But I'm certain that he knows smallholders are actually more risky, to finance. Agriculture generally as a sector is risky to finance. And most banks, if not all, I mean, there's a couple in Uganda, maybe Centenary Bank and a couple of others, who have taken a couple of, steps in understanding to finance agriculture. But the bulk of the financial institutions in Uganda do not understand agriculture finance. And therefore, with complexities like unpredictable weather patterns, which you have talked about, with things like seasonality, and with things like commodity price volatility, it becomes even more complicated to finance an individual smallholder farmer. So I think we need to be realistic and understand that. The first would be to get these folks into some sort of value chain.
So you actually want to exclude the biggest percentage of people involved in agriculture?
It's not excluding, listen.
But that's what it is.
It is getting them into value chains. It is getting them into value chains. And once you've got them in value chains where they are aggregating, it becomes much easier to take on that risk.
Okay.
But financing an individual is much more complicated than we think it is. And that is a fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, let me take 2 or 3 more callers in line, and then we see what Bakr has got to say about that contribution from our caller. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Frederick.
I'm sorry?
I'm Frederick Kawaya from Kamocha.
Frederick Kawaya on air, sir.
Yes. 2 things, Patrick.
Okay.
One, by the time Victoria left the Ministry
Yes.
of Agriculture, they had farms all over the nation. Okay, they are either non-functional or they are so. 2, they do not have a food redistribution policy. While in Port Poto, you might find maybe that there is a lot of matoke flooding, the market 5,000 shillings. The Ministry of Agriculture cannot transport that same food to Kampala. Thank you very much.
Logistics, like somebody had said earlier. Okay, let me take 2 more callers, and then my panelists will respond at once. Hello?
Hello?
Good evening, sir.
My name is Pat Kasigwa Kabyemera.
Mr. Kabyemera, you're on air, sir.
I'm calling from Kitiko Kigo Road.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the subject of tonight.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, we are talking all about this, but where do the farmers have their soil in order to know the appropriate fertilizers to be used in the soil before they can cultivate anything? There is an example of Kenya when you watch Shamba Shape Up program. The farmer gets the sample of the soil, sends it for testing, pays the money by mobile money, and it gets the results of the fertilizers needed by SMS. Regarding irrigation, when you visit some countries, I think Dr. Secretoleko will bear witness with me, where there are big water bodies, the governments have made to make water run from one side to another side, and the farmers can benefit from those waterways. What is the government up to here? We are talking of irrigation, but there is no connection either from Lake Kyoga or Lake Albert or Lake Victoria to help people irrigate their land. Thank you for my time.
Thank you very much. And yet, a water-stressed area like Egypt is giving us a lot of juice, for example, and fruits. Yeah. I've seen them around, and you wonder how are they able to do that. Let me take maybe two more callers. Hello? I seem to have lost that. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello?
You're on air. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. My name is Bob.
Where are you calling from, Paul?
I'm calling from Kampala.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. The problem with Uganda, I'm calling from Kampala. I think the problem with Uganda is the sense we attach to agriculture. During Obote's time, we had the Secretariat centered in the Bank of Uganda, and it was taken very seriously as the organ that makes policy on agriculture. In 2011, Dr. Besigye highlighted the issue of irrigation and the National Agricultural Bank. Picked it up, but they've been talking about it, paying lip service, and nothing has been done. And look where we are now. We knew the problem long ago.
Thank you very much. Okay, water, agriculture, extension services, and doing it better than we have. I've seen the president try to demonstrate in Luwero that if you use some kind of simple irrigation, probably that could help. Old methods, like how the Egyptians were doing it 1,000 years ago, using something called the shaduf, it worked for them then. It's more or less, it's not any different than what we are trying to do now, maybe a millennia later. But the issue of agricultural financing, one of the callers thinks your idea may not work.
You see, it's not about whether the idea will work or not. It's a question of statistics. When you're responding to a problem and they tell you 96% of the people are smallholders, that's the financing solution you should be looking for. Financing is like clothing.
Let me ask,
it
how
has
many in the United States or developed countries, what is the percentage of people involved in agriculture?
It's usually a very small percentage.
Like 3, 2%.
A very small percentage.
I think this is what he's talking about.
But comparing with Europe is a bit unfair, because what I know in Europe is that they are subsidized. Exactly. They don't even get financing on credit. I don't even want to go there because it's a very controversial issue in the World Trade Organization, and it's one of the reasons that Africa thinks we can't grow on aid. I'm one of those economists who don't believe that aid is the solution, although I'm not saying it's not important because we're poor. But trading and investment is the way. But let me go into agricultural finance. Agricultural finance has to be appropriate and with the right target. Yeah. The commercial banks, as they are designed, are not the ones to finance agriculture. Although I must say, banks like DFCU, after recently being taken over by an agrocentric bank, have increased funding to the agriculture sector up to the level of 17% of their portfolio. But they are still not for that person that we need. In Uganda, the solution we need for financing agriculture is not just finance. So if you're financing, you have to come with the agronomist, and you have to come with a weatherproof method to reduce the risk. It's not enough to say that they're too risky and we run away.
Yeah.
We can't do that. This is our country. We have to figure it out. It means that if a person has been growing vegetables and rain is not coming, if we finance them, we have to build them. We have to build them a greenhouse with a water trapping mechanism as a level of finance. Then bring in some young people, mix them with the old. This is the way forward. We can't run away from this problem.
In fact, the alternative is to go the South African way, because like in Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, they have the large farmers and everybody works on the large farms. We in Uganda are lucky that every Ugandan would like to participate, and all they are asking is give us a hand, and we shall we shall be included in the economy. We shall make our contribution. What is wrong with that?
I was in Israel in 2003, and I was able to visit different places, including Haifa, and you could see people producing food. It's just a small country. It's a desert, but they're producing fruits more than maybe East and Central Africa combined, using the drip irrigation and all that. And I was asking one of the guys, how do you do this? And he was saying, with a little bit of water, a lot of ideas, the desert is actually even moving away. But here we have, with a lot of water, are we lacking ideas?
One thing I can tell
Dr. Kaute?
It's not necessarily lacking ideas. I think there are even organizational issues as well. Why I'm saying organizational issues, we want to spread out to get everybody to appreciate that we are caring about that corner and that corner and that corner. It doesn't work that way. When in Africa you concentrate in one area to put effect and expect spread, within only 2 months you are accused of abandoning other people and thinking of only the other people. You create a political crisis, everybody starts demanding that and that. But the reality would be concentrate somewhere, create effect, let that area be commercially viable and spread. In any case, there are different enterprises that can be in different corners and move along, and we all benefit. But we got a typical example of when Idi Amin imported 33 tractors. I think it was from Tunisia or Algeria. Algeria. And they decided to give every district one tractor. What was the one tractor going to do for a district? Why were these tractors put in some 3-4 farms and they caused effect? And then there were mechanics specialized in them trotting the whole country, going to repair one tractor per district until they failed.
Enjoying per diem.
That type of approach, that type of approach, we must concentrate resources and create effect somewhere.
And also briefly, your parting shot, your concluding remark.
Well, I think that the country has a very high potential. The current drought should not make us believe that we are hopeless. No. Okay. It's a drought. It's like an accident. Let us pick up from here, study what we need carefully, and proceed along well-planned lines. Let's not be ad hoc in the way we approach things.
Dr. Sektoleko, your concluding remark.
Yeah, along the same lines, this shock therapy should not force us to jump where we shouldn't jump. Like now, a lot is being said about irrigation, but we do not have irrigation engineers. You know, where we have water engineers and whatever, I think I only know of 2 irrigation engineers in Uganda. So what should we be doing now? At least training irrigation technicians. But even that is not being done. But meanwhile, we are busy planning to go into irrigation. So let us not panic. Let us use what we have where we are to actually move in a systematic manner. Meaning we have a budget. Let us put that budget where our mouth is, so that Uganda can prosper.
Thank you. Bakr.
I would say that we refocus on those products that we've lived on for so long.
Yeah.
The coffee, the tea, the cotton. Then we have to figure out agriculture financing for the smallholder. But finance has to come with agronomy. Somebody technical enough. That's how the risk comes down a little bit. I think for me those would be the key areas.
Thank you very much, Bakr Mayanja. Thank you very much, Dr. Victoria Sektoleko. And thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas Kauta, and for you who have been a part of this. It will be embarrassing if Ugandans, we starve, yet the biggest percentage of the arable land in East Africa is here. But also I'm told we have the biggest percentage of freshwater lake in Africa here, and the beautiful soils and wonderful climate. We need to do something. We can do better than this. Good night, and God bless Uganda.